Well, the resolution is pretty clear that all it referred to really was the fact that in the future it would be the People's Republic of China, which would represent China in the UN. And since then, China has, or PRC has used that as an excuse to say, well, that refers to Taiwan because Taiwan is part of China. But that's an assumption that the resolution doesn't include. So it's interesting, years ago, nobody paid any attention to that. But more recently, particularly the last 2 or 3 years, there's been more and more attention to that resolution, in part because there have been people in Taiwan who said this is nonsense. One of them is Robert Tsao, who's made a great effort on his own part to educate the public, but also to drive people to say, hey, 2758 really has nothing to do with Taiwan. And so then you find people like Mike Pompeo, who have now taken that on as an issue and agreed and said, yes, this is the fact. So there's a growing momentum. In general, overall, there's been a growing momentum in the United States politically to try to give more of the benefit of the doubt to Taiwan rather than just assume that, okay, we can't annoy China. So things have changed a lot. I was in the State Department, Foreign Service for 34 years, and one of the big changes I saw over that period of time was growing recognition of Taiwan's status as a country, as a place of technological prowess, of a strong economy, of a country that's democratic, that's free, and deserves respect and support. So I think within that context, it was almost inevitable 2758 would become an issue.
Right. Well, there are 2 points from your answer. One is that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, Zhonggong, trying to take the 2758 in such a way that it means Taiwan is part of China. Other than the CCP, the PRC, 我们讲中华人民共和国 is the only legitimate government representing China, right? But your answer, your explanation is such that it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with Taiwan. That's the first point. The second point is that you meant that it was not noticed before. But in recent years, more and more people, even including the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, say that this is not such a fact, right? Okay, so 所以 Bill 刚刚所讲的其实就是说，这个2758决议文当时候其实它主要的用意是把蒋介石政权把它逐出联合国，跟台湾现在的这个状态是无关的哈。Okay, so could you comment on the Chiang Kai-shek regime at that time? Because that resolution was meant to kick the Chiang Kai-shek regime out of the UN, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it had that effect, but if you cling to the idea that the Republic of China is also in charge of China, then it becomes more disputable. But once you give up the idea that you're not claiming that you represent all of the mainland that the CCP controls, then there's no justification anymore for not saying, hey, 2758 does not apply to Taiwan in the sense that we're part of China. It doesn't. All it means is we recognize that now the UN, as an international body, recognizes that the Communist Party of China is in control of the People's Republic of China. That's what it means.
Okay, and you were a AIT director, and many Chinese people are familiar with this term, One China policy. 一中政策. One China policy is sort of like Americans' focus, which is different from One China principle. 一中原则是中共的, which is like by CCP. So, we said this many times in other programs, like including my other shows, that One China policy, the meaning of that is, so on and so forth. But we never heard from the mouth of people like you. Could you explain to us what is One China policy, American version, or just according to American perspective, what is One China policy?
Well, I guess it's basically that we recognize that.
Is it recognize or acknowledge?
We acknowledge.
Acknowledge.
That's the big distinction, the verb you use. We acknowledge the Chinese position that the CCP is in control of China. But we don't recognize that there's only one China, which includes Taiwan. We acknowledge that's the Chinese position, but we acknowledge lots of things, like it may be raining today, but that doesn't mean that it's going to rain every day.
So we'll pause a little bit here. Acknowledge means that the United States notice, meaning that you don't have a stance in that.
Right.
You don't have any position on this issue, right? You just know if there's a such divide, in a cross-strait relation. Is that correct?
我们注意到中国的立场，可是我们不同意。
我们不同意。
不同意。
Okay.
If we said we accept, that would be different. But we've never said accept.
And recognize is a stronger term. It's accept, right?
Right.
And even now, do you have confidence in saying that even now AIT still possess this, policy, One China policy, in the content you just mentioned?
Yes, U.S. has been pretty strict about keeping within those lines. So for China PRC to say otherwise is just wrong. But they like to do that. So you can't stop them, but you have to remind them and the world all the time that that's not the U.S. position.
OK 所以 Bill 讲得很清楚美国的一中政策所讲的就是美国人知晓两岸有这个分歧，可是并没有认同中国的领土是包含台湾这个是我们的这个 Bill， 虽然他已经卸任，他讲的话并不代表 AIT， so your statements now is not on behalf of AIT. I hope that this is not a protest from AIT tomorrow or sometime.